They told me I had 5 minutes to say goodbye. I was strapped to the gurney waiting for the end when they finally let my dog enter the chamber. Everyone expected him to whine or lick my face, but the moment he stepped inside, his military training took over. He didn't come to say goodbye. He went straight for the machine at the foot of my bed, snarling and clawing at the wires. The guards tried to pull him away, but he blocked them with a ferocity that stopped the clock. He wasn't being aggressive. He was alerting them to a lethal malfunction that was about to turn a procedural execution into a catastrophic explosion. If you've ever believed a bond could exist, even when hope is gone, stay with me. And if a Mao has ever surprised you at the moment it mattered most, tell me in the comments. Stories like this are why people subscribe here. I'll tell this the way it happened, without drama, without exaggeration. He was already strapped in when they asked him if he had any last requests. He didn't ask for mercy. He didn't ask for time. He asked to see his dog. There was hesitation. Protocol. Quiet discussion behind glass. This wasn't normal procedure. Dogs weren't part of this room. But someone finally nodded. 5 minutes, they said. The room was silent when the door opened again. The dog walked in slowly, nails clicking against the floor, ears relaxed, tail low. He wasn't trained for this place. No commands, no handlers giving signals. Just a Ba walking toward the person he loved. The man's hands were restrained. His voice was unsteady when he spoke the dog's name. The dog stopped a few feet away, stared at him. Then he did something no one in that room was prepared for. And in that moment, before anyone could react, the entire meaning of why this dog had been there changed. The dog didn't run. That was the first thing everyone noticed. No lunging, no whining, no frantic pulling toward the man on the gurney. He walked in at an even pace, head level, eyes soft, but fixed, like he was counting steps, like he was reading the room. A guard cleared his throat. Someone glanced at the clock on the wall. 5 minutes, the warden said again, quietly. That's it. The man tried to smile. It didn't quite work. Hey boy, he said, voice cracking. You came. The dog stopped a few feet short, sat, studied him. People later said it felt wrong in a way they couldn't explain. Dogs usually rush moments like this. They collapse into their people. They cry. They beg. This dog didn't. He stood back up and circled once, slow and deliberate, sniffing the air near the man's legs, the straps, the floor. His nose paused at the base of the gurney. Then he stiffened. The handler, standing by the door tense, felt it instantly. He took one step forward. Easy, he whispered. The dog ignored him. The man laughed weakly. Still working, huh? The dog lifted his head and met the man's eyes, held them. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or confirmation. Then the dog moved, not toward the man's face, toward the straps. He lunged. Gasps rippled through the room as the dog clamped his teeth onto the thick leather restraint near the man's ankle and pulled, hard. Hey, someone shouted. A guard rushed forward. The dog growled, not wild, not panicked, controlled. The handler froze mid-step. Wait, he said sharply. Let him. The dog shook his head once, violently, testing the strap. It didn't give. He adjusted his grip and pulled again, planting his paws against the floor, muscles bunching under his coat. Get him out of here, another voice said. Now. The man's breathing quickened. Buddy, what are you? The dog released the strap and snapped his head up, barking once, sharp, echoing, startling enough that everyone jumped. Then he did something no one expected. He dropped flat to the floor, pressed his body against the base of the gurney. Blocking. Stop, the handler said again, louder now. Everyone stop! The dog's ears were forward, eyes locked on something no one else could see. His nose twitched, pulling in scent after scent, tracing something invisible along the floor. A technician glanced at the machine beside the gurney. Is that? He started. The dog barked again, closer, louder. The handler's heart pounded. He knew that bark. He'd heard it once before, years ago, on a training field when a routine drill went wrong. That's an alert, he said. That's not goodbye behavior. The warden hesitated. Alert for what? The dog stood and paced once, tight, focused, then returned to the same spot at the base of the gurney, pawing at the floor. Check the line, the handler said. Now. A guard knelt reluctantly and followed the dog's paw to a cable running from the machine, tucked along the floor. His fingers brushed it. He flinched. Sir, he said, looking up, this isn't right. What isn't right? The warden snapped. There's condensation. Here. And the connector, he swallowed. It's overheating. The room shifted. The dog barked again, insistent, then nudged the guard's shoulder with his nose, hard, pushing him back from the gurney. The handler stepped in at last, pulling the dog just enough to give space. He's telling you it's dangerous, he said. He doesn't act like this unless it is. The man on the gurney stared at the ceiling, eyes wide now. What's happening? He asked. No one answered him. Another technician rushed forward, checked the panel, then froze. Shut it down, he said quietly. Now. The machine powered down with a heavy click. Silence fell hard over the room. The dog sat right at the man's side, and for the first time since entering, he leaned in, pressing his head against the man's restrained hand, breathing steady, grounding. You did it, the man whispered, tears spilling freely now. You came. No one corrected him because everyone in that room had just realized the same thing. The dog hadn't come to say goodbye. He'd come to stop something. They called it a pause. That's the word the warden used. Calm, procedural, as if the room hadn't just tipped on its axis. A temporary pause, he said. Everyone stepped back. No one argued. Not because they were convinced, because the dick wouldn't let them. He stayed planted at the base of the gurney, body angled outward, eyes tracking every movement around the machine. When a guard shifted his weight, the dog's head snapped toward him. When a technician leaned in too close, the dog barked, short, sharp, enough to stop him cold. Good boy, the handler murmured under his breath. Thank you. The man on the gurney was shaking now, not sobbing, not begging, processing. Is it broken? He asked quietly. The handler didn't answer. He was watching the dog. Another technician approached with gloves and a handheld scanner. The moment he knelt, the dog stood and stepped between him and the gurney, blocking with his chest. Easy, the technician said, startled. I'm just checking. The dog didn't move. He's not being aggressive, the handler said. He's controlling distance. The technician hesitated, then repositioned himself farther back. Only then did the dog sit. The scan beeped, once, then again. The technician's expression tightened. There's a fault in the connector, he said. Could be moisture, could be internal damage. How long? The warden asked. I don't know, the technician replied, but it's not safe to proceed. The dog exhaled and lay down again, his chin resting on the floor, eyes still open. Guarding, they tried to clear the room. Standard protocol. Fewer people, less chaos. The dog refused. When two guards moved to escort him out, he stood and placed himself squarely between them and the gurney. He didn't bare his teeth, didn't growl. He just stood there. No, the handler said quietly. Don't force him. The warden frowned. This is irregular. So is a malfunction, the handler replied. Minutes passed, then another alert sounded from the machine. The dog barked instantly, loud enough to echo. Okay, the warden said sharply. That's enough. Full shutdown. Everyone out. The room emptied except for the handler, the Jane, and the man on the gurney. The dog finally relaxed just a fraction, enough to lean into the handler's leg. You're doing great, the handler whispered. Good boy. The man turned his head as much as the restraints allowed. He's never acted like this, he said. Not once, Mom. The handler nodded. That's because this isn't goodbye. Hours later, after inspections and paperwork and quiet arguments behind glass, the warden returned. There's a serious equipment failure, he said. The execution is postponed. The man let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The dog stood up, walked to him, pressed his forehead gently against the man's cheek. The handler swallowed hard. Thank you, the man whispered. Thank you. The dog's tail thumped once. just once. They led the man away not to his cell but to medical. Observation, protocol. As they wheeled him out, the dog walked alongside the gurney, never once pulling ahead, never lagging behind. Still working, still watching. Later, when they tried to separate them, the dog sat and refused to move. The handler didn't argue. "Give him a minute," he said. "He earned it." The dog lay down at the man's feet and closed his eyes. Resting but not finished, because whatever he'd smelled, whatever he'd heard, whatever had made him act in that room, it wasn't a single mistake. It was a warning, and he wasn't done protecting yet. The delay was supposed to be routine. That's what everyone kept saying. Equipment failure, maintenance review, paperwork, nothing more. But the dog didn't relax. Not when they moved the man to medical observation. Not when the door closed behind them. Not when the lights dimmed and the room emptied. He stayed close. Too close. While a nurse checked vitals and a doctor reviewed charts, the dog paced once, then returned to the same spot beside the gurney. His ears flicked with every sound from the hallway. His nose hovered near the man's chest, then dipped toward the floor again. Tracking. The handler noticed first. He'd seen this posture before. Rarely. The kind that meant the dog wasn't reacting to a single problem anymore. He was layering information. "What is it?" the man asked quietly. "What do you smell?" The dog didn't answer him. He turned and stared at the door. A cart rolled past outside. The dog's head snapped up. Footsteps followed, heavy, uneven. The dog barked once, sharp, directional. The handler straightened. "Who's out there?" A guard paused at the window. "Maintenance," he said, "running diagnostics." The dog growled, low, controlled, and positioned himself between the door and the gurney. "Hey," the guard said, "easy." The dog didn't move. The handler stepped forward. "Hold on," he said, "let me check something." He crouched and followed the dog's nose line along the floor, under the bed frame, toward the wall where cables disappeared into a service panel. There. A faint smell, sharp, metallic, wrong. The handler's stomach dropped. "Don't open that door," he said. "Not yet." The guard frowned. "We're cleared." The dog barked again. Louder. The nurse looked up. "Is something wrong?" "I don't know," the handler said honestly. "But he does." The footsteps outside stopped. A voice came through the door. "We need access." The dog lunged, not at the door, but toward the wall panel, pawing at it, nails scraping, barking now in short bursts that echoed in the small room. The handler didn't hesitate. He hit the emergency call button. Within seconds, supervisors arrived. Questions overlapped. Protocols collided. The dog kept barking. They opened the service panel. Inside, a cable was split, exposed, scorched. "Who authorized this?" someone demanded. No one answered. A technician ran a scanner and went pale. "There's a residual charge," he said. "If that line had reactivated." He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew how. The dog sat, watched. The handler exhaled slowly. He smelled it before it heated up again. Silence settled over the room. The man on the gurney stared at the ceiling, chest rising and falling fast. "So, what now?" No one answered him right away, because the question had changed. This wasn't about a delay anymore. It was about why the equipment had failed in the first place, and why something dangerous had still been active when it shouldn't have been. An investigation was called, statements taken, logs reviewed. The dog stayed with the man through it all, never leaving his side. Not when they disconnected lines. Not when they rolled him back to a holding room. Not when voices outside grew tense and quiet. Hours later, a senior official entered with a folder in his hands. "There's more," he said carefully. The room held its breath. "There were irregularities in the maintenance schedule," he continued, "and unauthorized changes to the system." The man swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," the official said, "this wasn't just a malfunction." The dog stood, stepped closer to the man, and for the first time since entering that building, he leaned his full weight against him. Steady, grounding, certain. The handler felt it then. The shift. This wasn't just prevention anymore. It was protection. and the danger hadn't fully passed. If you're still here right now, it's because you can feel that shift. The moment when this stopped being about a delay and became about survival. If a dog has ever sensed danger before anyone else could explain it, tell me in the comments. And subscribe, because what happens next is why this dog changed everything. After that, the world reduced itself to essentials. One room, one man, one dog. Everything else, uniforms, titles, authority, blurred into noise. The dog stayed pressed against the man's side, breathing steady, eyes alert but calm now. Not searching anymore. Not scanning. Waiting. The handler sat on the floor across from them, back against the wall, watching the dog more than the door. He trusted that posture more than any report or clearance. "You're safe for now," the handler said it quietly. The dog didn't react. Because for now wasn't a finish line. The man finally spoke. His voice was thin but steady. "He saved me, didn't he?" The handler nodded once. Twice. The man's throat tightened. "I just wanted to see him." The dog shifted, lifting his head to look at the man's face. Their eyes met, and something softened. Not relief, recognition. The dog laid his head gently on the man's chest, feeling the rise and fall, counting it, confirming it, alive. The investigation dragged on outside the room. Raised voices, phones ringing, doors opening and closing. None of it mattered here, because the money didn't move to it. At one point, a guard approached and paused in the doorway. The dog looked up, not hostile, just present. The guard stopped without being told. "I'll come back later," he said quietly. The handler noticed how everyone now adjusted to the dog, not the other way around. Time passed differently after that. Eventually, the senior official returned. His tone was no longer procedural. "We've suspended the execution indefinitely," he said, "pending full review." The man closed his eyes. The dog exhaled, a slow, deep breath that seemed to come from somewhere old and heavy. But still, he didn't leave his position. Because suspension wasn't safety. The handler understood that now. They moved the man to a different wing, different equipment, different power source, different everything. The dog walked beside the gurney, shoulder aligned with the man's hip, matching speed exactly. When they stopped, he stopped. When they turned, he turned. Always watching. At the new room, the dog finally sat and leaned back against the wall, placing his body between the man and the door. Only then did his muscles loosen. Only then did his eyes close for more than a blink. The handler sat beside him and rested a hand on his back. "You did good," he whispered. "You can rest." The dog didn't fully sleep, but he let go just enough. The man reached as far as he could and brushed his fingers against the dog's ear. "I didn't ask for time," he said softly, "but you gave me some anyway." The dog's tail moved once. That was all. Because the why wasn't to celebrate, the why was to stay. The final decision didn't come quickly. It came the way truth usually does, slowly, under pressure after everything fragile had already been tested. The man stayed in that room overnight. Different equipment, independent power, continuous monitoring. Every protocol rewritten on the flame. The dog never left. Not when the lights dimmed, not when the hallway fell quiet, not when exhaustion pulled at everyone else. He stayed curled against the man's side, body angled so his back faced the door, nose lifting every few minutes to taste the air. Guarding. Just before dawn, a group of officials entered. Quietly, carefully, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. The dog opened his eyes immediately. Didn't stand, didn't growl. He just watched. The senior official spoke first. "We've completed a preliminary review." No one interrupted him. "There were deliberate alterations to the system," he continued. "Not an accident, not a malfunction." The man's breath caught. So? "So the execution cannot proceed," the official said. "Not today, possibly not ever." The room went still. The dog lifted his head. The man stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then his face crumpled. Not in relief, not in joy, but in something deeper, disbelief. "I was ready," he whispered. "I said goodbye." The handler swallowed hard. You don't have to today. The dog stood, walked around the bed once, then climbed up as far as he was allowed, placing his front paws gently on the mattress, pressing his forehead against the man's chest. The man broke. He sobbed openly now, shoulders shaking, words dissolving into breath. They were going to kill me, he choked. And you. The dog didn't move. He stayed there, solid and warm and real. Someone turned away, wiping their eyes. The official cleared his throat. There will be an investigation, he said. And until it's resolved, you're staying here, under protection. Protection. The word landed differently now, because everyone in that room knew who had provided it first. They moved the man later that day to a secure medical wing. No machines, no restraints, just monitoring and guards posted quietly outside. The dog walked with him the entire way. When they reached the room, the handler hesitated. I'll take him back to the unit, he said gently. He's done his job. The dog didn't move. He sat down, faced the bed. The handler tried again. Buddy. The dog stayed. The man looked at him. It's okay, he said softly. You did enough. The dog finally turned his head, looked at the handler, then back at the man, and slowly, reluctantly, he lay down at the foot of the bed, close enough to touch, close enough to hear every breath. That night the man slept, really slept. Not the shallow, braced rest of someone waiting for an end, but deep, unguarded sleep. And for the first time since this began, the dog slept too. Not fully, not deeply, but enough. Days later, when the story began to spread, quietly, carefully, it wasn't framed as a miracle or a spectacle. It was told as a fact. A dog delayed an execution. A dog detected danger no one else saw. A dog bought time when time was supposed to be gone. People argued about the implications, the legality, the coincidence. The handler never joined those conversations. When asked what the dog did, he answered simply, he did his job. And when asked why the dog acted the way he did, why he lunged, blocked, refused to leave, the handler said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. He wasn't trained for executions, he said. He was trained to protect his person. In the end, that was the only explanation that mattered. The dog didn't understand laws, or sentences, or finality. He understood one thing. The person he loved was in danger. And as long as that was true, leaving was never an option. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that loyalty doesn't wait for permission, subscribe so stories like this are never forgotten. And tell me in the comments, would you trust instinct when everything else says it's too late? They brought the dog in to say goodbye, but he came to make sure there was still time.